Hey everyone, welcome to Manage Engine's June Patch Tuesday webinar. Hope all of you are safe and sound. Thank you for taking time off your schedule to join our webinar today. Let me introduce myself now. For those of you who don't know, I'm Kartika and I'm a product specialist at Manage Engine. I'll be a presenter for today. I'm also accompanied by an expert panel who will be assisting you with all your queries today. In today's session, we will focus on this month's Patch Tuesday updates along with the ways to handle them. This is going to be a quick 45-minute session wherein we'll be discussing in brief about the rising cybercrimes and the news that made it to the headlines. Following that, we will have a complete breakdown of this month's Patch Tuesday updates, analyzing in detail about the risks of neglecting them. After which, I'll give you pointers on how to tackle patching in a hybrid work environment. Feel free to ask questions anywhere in the session. This webinar is being recorded, and the recorded version will be available to you in 1 to 2 working days. So that said, let's dive straight into the first thing on our agenda, cybersecurity. The real scares when it comes to the IT world are cyber threats and attacks, which are only increasing and becoming more relentless with time. Let's take a look at few of them that made it to the headlines. First up, we have the infamous Polliner continuing to be exploited in the wild. But fortunately, Microsoft has released a patch for this zero day in this Patch Tuesday. So the zero-day vulnerability in Microsoft Support Diagnostic tool, that is MSDT, dubbed as Folliner, is being exploited in the wild. Reports have emerged that threat actors have been targeting the US government agencies and Ukrainian media houses via phishing attacks, leveraging this particular vulnerability. For a brief recap, this zero-day bug in MSDT can cause remote code execution when MSDT is called using the URL protocol from a calling application such as Microsoft Word. The vulnerability affects all Windows versions that still receive security updates. It has been reported that the threat actors can execute arbitrary code in the affected systems using a specially crafted Microsoft Word document. So as soon as the user opens the malicious file, the infected document paves the way for attackers to execute PowerShell commands using MSDT. So like I told you guys before, Microsoft has released an update to mitigate the zero day in this Patch Tuesday. We'll take a look at that shortly. Moving on to the next news item, we have a critical bug in Citrix application delivery management that allows admin password reset. So this bug is tracked as CVE 2022-27511. This is a critical vulnerability that has been reported in the Citrix application delivery management. For a quick recap of this vulnerability and Citrix ADM, the Citrix ADM is a web-based solution and it provides admins with a centralized cloud-based console for managing on-premises or cloud Citrix deployments. Described as an improper access control issue, this particular bug can allow a remote, unauthenticated attacker to corrupt the system and trigger an administrator password reset. So this vulnerability affects all supported versions of Citrix ADM server and the Citrix ADM agent. As for the mitigation, Citrix has recommended its users to upgrade both Citrix ADM server and all associated Citrix ADM agents to the relevant higher versions. with that, we come to the end of the cyber news section. Let's take a quick look at the Windows lifecycle and the versions of the operating system that are due for end of life. So, as most of you are already aware of, Microsoft has terminated its support for Windows 10 version 20H2 for Home, Pro, and Pro for Workstations edition, and Windows 10 version 1909 for Enterprise and Education last month. Hence, the updates for the same this month are not supported by Manage Engine. Customers who are still on these versions are requested to move up and upgrade to later versions like Windows 10 21H1 or Windows 11. So that said, let's take a look at the Patch Tuesday updates now. Starting with the zero-day vulnerabilities, we have one actively exploited zero-day patch this month. So like we saw earlier in the news section, this is the zero-day vulnerability in Microsoft Support Diagnostic tool. The vulnerability is tracked as CVE 2022-30190. So it is a publicly disclosed, actively exploited vulnerability in MSDT, and Microsoft has released a patch for the same. So we would recommend you to start this month's patching with this particular patch. Moving on to the critical vulnerabilities patched this Patch Tuesday, we have 3 of those, and all 3 of them are remote code execution vulnerabilities. So once you're done patching the zero-day vulnerability, we would recommend you to start with these critical vulnerabilities. So a total of 870 patches have been released in June 2022 so far, and all of them are supported by Endpoint Central, Patch Manager Plus, and Vulnerability Manager Plus. So I would like to take this opportunity to inform all of you that we have rebranded Desktop Central as Endpoint Central. So the feature set and the ownership, none of that has changed. We've just rebranded to move in line with the market trends. So Desktop Central is now called Endpoint Central. Moving on to the Patch Tuesday split up. So we have about 59 vulnerabilities patched this Patch Tuesday, with 65 patches released for the same. Take a look at the breakdown of vulnerabilities with respect to the components that were patched. So as you guys can see, we have about 77 vulnerabilities addressed in Windows, and we have few vulnerabilities addressed in Microsoft Office as well as the SQL Server. Moving on to the patch distribution by impact, we find that most of the vulnerabilities patched this month are remote code execution vulnerabilities, followed by a few elevation of privilege vulnerabilities and a few information disclosure vulnerabilities. Now take a look at the patches with respect to their severity. So about 6% of the patches released are marked critical, and about 92% of them are marked important. This means that most of the patches released this Patch Tuesday are important for your environment. So it is prudent to test these patches and deploy them to your environment as soon as possible. Now let's take a look at the OS or applications that were patched this month one by one. Starting with Microsoft Windows, the vulnerabilities patched are termed critical, moderate, and important. And not applying these patches could cause remote code execution, elevation of privilege, information disclosure, denial of service, spoofing, and security feature bypass in your network. So here are the CVIDs for the Microsoft Windows vulnerabilities. I'm going to pause a few seconds so that you guys can take a note of this or take a screenshot of the same. So the vulnerabilities in bold are the critical vulnerabilities in Windows this month. Moving forward, we have Microsoft Office with patches released that are marked important. Not deploying these could cause remote code execution and information disclosure in your network. So these are the CVIDs for the Microsoft Office vulnerabilities. We have about 7 vulnerabilities fixed in Office this month. Moving on to Microsoft Edge, we have patches that are termed important released for Edge this month. And not deploying them could cause elevation of privilege, remote code execution, and spoofing in your network. It is also noteworthy to note that Internet Explorer has been officially terminated. So this happened yesterday, and Microsoft has urged its loyal Internet Explorer users to shift to Microsoft Edge. Moving forward, these are the CVIDs for the Microsoft Edge vulnerabilities patched this Patch Tuesday. For the SQL Server, we have patches released that are termed important, and not deploying them could cause remote code execution in your network. So we just have one vulnerability patched in Microsoft SQL Server, as you guys can see on your screen. Apart from this, we've had few third-party updates also released for Windows this Patch Tuesday. You can see updates released for Google Drive and Adobe Acrobat Reader and so on for Windows this Tuesday. Along with that, we also have few third-party updates released for Mac as well. With that, we've come to the end of the Patch Tuesday update breakdown. New vulnerabilities per year is increasing at an alarming rate. Now that most organizations have adopted a hybrid work culture, vulnerabilities that target remote systems are rampant. So here are a few best practices that you can follow to maintain good patch hygiene in a distributed work environment. So as a golden rule, always test your patches before deployment. Prioritize security and critical updates for all machines. Synchronize patching schedules with monthly Patch Tuesdays. Set broad deployment windows for remote machines and patch during the non-business hours for office machines, especially your servers. You can also allow your end users the liberty to postpone deployments and reboots. So you can deploy Patch Tuesday updates and achieve all of the above mentioned best practices with Manage Engine's patch management solutions such as Patch Manager Plus, Endpoint Central, and Vulnerability Manager Plus. So right now I'm going to use Patch Manager Plus to demonstrate how to deploy Patch Tuesday updates and other major functionalities that will greatly simplify your patch management routine. So like I mentioned earlier, it's extremely important to test your patches before deployment. So we've had few instances wherein we've come across updates that have misbehaved significantly in user environments. To avoid such instances, it is always best to test your patches on a pilot group of systems and then deploy them to your production environment. So with Patch Manager Plus, you can easily automate this entire process. So now let me take you to the console and show you how this can be done. So right now I'm using Patch Manager Plus, build version 10.1.2138.15. So users out there who are using Endpoint Central or Vulnerability Manager Plus need not worry because the patch management features in all of these three products are exactly the same. So this is how the console looks like for first-time users. We have interactive graphs that give you the network status, the system health status of your machines, the missing patches by severity and all just a click away. We also have the latest cybersecurity news lined up right here. So as you can see, we have covered the Paulina vulnerability last week, as and when it was discovered and exploited. So you get all of your latest cybersecurity news right here, just a click away. Now let me show you guys how to completely automate the testing of patches. So under deployment, you have the option called test and approve right here. So click on that. So these are the test groups that we've already created. To create a new group, you can just go ahead and add a group. So you need to choose a platform on which you want your test group to be based on. If you're having a multi-OS environment, we would recommend you to create test groups for your Windows machines, your Mac machines, and your Linux machines. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to create a test group for my Windows machine today. So choose the platform. Then you can go ahead and select the custom group or the pilot group of machines that you want to test your patches on. So you can go with an already existing group, or you can go ahead and create a new custom group. So all you have to do is click on create custom group. So you can just go in, create a new group, name the group accordingly. And then you need to choose the category of your group. For instance, your group can be static, your test group can be static or static unique. Your test groups cannot be dynamic because in dynamic groups, what we do is select a criteria. For instance, say operating system equal, let's go with Windows 8. So what happens is that all your managed machines, which are Windows 8, will automatically become part of this dynamic group if you go with dynamic. So what happens is even if a new machine, a new Windows 8 machine is added to your network and is managed by Patch Manager Plus, it will automatically be part of this dynamic group if I set it as a dynamic group. So when it comes to a test group, this is not an ideal behavior. That is why we only allow static and static unique categories for test groups. So once you've selected the category, you can just go ahead and add the machines that you want as part of your test groups. So ideally, we would recommend you to have machines from every flavor that is running in your production environment. So once that is done, all you have to do is go ahead and give save and your test group will be successfully saved. So you can choose it from here as well. So once you have chosen your test group of machines, the next option is to select the updates that you want tested. So like I told you guys, you need to test all the updates that you're planning on deploying to your production environment. So if you're going to deploy your security updates, go ahead and test all of them. I'm only going to deploy my critical and important updates today. So I'm choosing just that. I'm also choosing my non-security updates and say optional updates. So you can go ahead and test all the updates that you're planning on deploying to your production environment. So you can test them on all of your applications, or you can test them on applications by excluding a few applications. For instance, legacy applications and so on. So this is called selective exclusion. For now, I'm gonna test them on all my applications. Similarly, you can do the same for third-party updates. For Windows machines, you can also check your antivirus definition updates and your driver updates. So the next section is choosing a deployment policy for your test groups. So you can go ahead and choose to deploy after a particular number of days from the vendor release. And you can also choose a deployment policy for your test groups. So you can go with a deployment policy that you've already created. You can go ahead and create a new policy or modify the existing policy as well. So once you've chosen the deployment policy for your test group, the next step is configuring notifications. So this is an optional step. If you want to get notified about your testing status, you can go ahead and enable the notification by giving your email ID here. If you've downloaded our mobile app, you can also get notified via the mobile app. So once that is done, the final and the most important step that makes this entire process automated is the automated approval for the tested patches. So once you enable this option, what happens is that successfully tested patches will automatically be approved or be marked approved after the particular number of days you mention here. So once this is done, you have completely automated your testing and approval process. And only patches that are marked approved will be deployed through the APD tasks. So once that is done, just go ahead, give create. You would have successfully created your test group. So let's go back to our presentation now. So now that we have tested our patches, the next step would be to create a Patch Tuesday based deployment policy for your machines and then associate them with an automate patch deployment or an APD task. So once you do this, your entire patch management routine itself is automated. So let me take you to the console and show how this can be done. Under deployment, you have the deployment policies option right here. So click on that. These are all the policies that have already been created. You can go ahead and create a new policy now. I'm going to name this policy June CT 22. Go ahead and save that. So creating a flexible deployment policy consists of 4 steps. The first one is configuring your deployment schedule or configuring the time and window at which you want your patches to be deployed. So you have the regular split where you can select the weeks you want this policy to run and the days you want it to run. Or you can go with our very unique Patch Tuesday based split. So once you select this, the weeks will be marked based on your Patch Tuesday. So you can leave this Patch Tuesday week for testing your patches. Then you can go ahead and set the deployment to happen in the weeks after the Patch Tuesday week. You can go ahead and select the days at which you want your deployment to happen. For instance, for your remote machines, you can go ahead and select all days, flexibility. For the machines at your office, you can go ahead and select maybe the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, and so on. Similarly, you can also choose the deployment window or the window at which you want your patches deployments to happen. So like I said, this is also completely up to you. You can go ahead and configure it as per your requirements. You can also add more schedules to the deployment windows as well. Then you have the option to download patches from the server to agent during the deployment window or anytime the agent contacts the server. So I'm going to go with the second option. You can also initiate deployment at system startup, refresh cycle, or whichever happens first. So I'm going to go with the third option. So once you have configured your deployment schedule, click on Save and Continue. And the next option is to set your pre-deployment activities. So you can go ahead and wake your computers in office on LAN and then initiate deployment. You can also go ahead and configure some pre-deployment reboot settings. You can also go ahead and add scripts. For instance, say you want to stop a particular process before this deployment happens, you can go ahead and add a script for the same. Or if you want to take an image of your system before the deployment, you can add the script for the same as well. You can just drag drop whatever you want added to your pre-deployment activities. To configure the same, just click on it. So for Wake Online, you have automatically wake computers before deployment. So you can check that. This is especially for your computers at office and your servers. The pre-deployment reboot, you can go ahead and configure to skip reboot for machines that don't require them. And you can also exclude reboot for servers. You can also go ahead and notify your users about reboot. So this user notification is extremely important when it comes to your remote users. So you can also set the notification timeout and customize your reboot message as well. So once you've configured your pre-deployment activities, go ahead, give save and continue. The third step is configuring your pre-deployment user notification. So this, like I told you guys before, is extremely important when it comes to your remote users. It is important that they are informed of your patch deployment schedule so that they can be prepared. So in case you need to tell your users something, you can add it in the notification message as well. We've added a lot of flexibility by allowing users to skip deployment as well. Say they're engaged in some very business critical task and they don't want the deployment to happen immediately, they can go ahead and skip deployment. But we also give you guys the option to force deployment after a particular number of days. For instance, let's say you initiated a patch task with a 0-day patch and the users chose to skip that particular deployment. So this patch has to be installed in all of your machines. So you can just go ahead and force deployment after, let's say, 2 days from which the user has skipped deployment. You can also go ahead and show the deployment progress on your client computers. So that's the pre-deployment user notification. So once you've configured that, give save and continue. And your final step is configuring your post-deployment activities. So what happens after your patch deployment task? So you have the reboot and shutdown. So we would recommend you guys to reboot your machines after patch tasks for them to be successful. And you also have custom scripts here. So like I told you guys, if you had, say, stopped a particular process in the pre-deployment activity, you can go ahead and start the process by adding a custom script for the same in the post-deployment activities and so on. So to configure your reboot, just click on the option. So we have the option to force reboot immediately in the deployment window itself after the deployment has happened. So this is ideal for your machines at office. And we have the option to delay reboot as well. We also provide postpone intervals. So the end user will get a notification pop up with all of these intervals from which he or she can choose the time at which they want their machines to be rebooted as well. You also additionally have the user defined time. So once you enable this, the end user will get a pop-up wherein he or she can mention the time at which they want their systems to be rebooted. So we've provided a lot of flexibility with this particular option here. Again, we also have the option to exclude reboot for your machines that don't require them and for your servers. So once that is done, just go ahead, save and continue. So you can just check your deployment policy once and save it. So it's been successfully created. The next step is associating this with an automate patch deployment task. Just go ahead, under deployment, you will have automate patch deployment. Go ahead and create a new task. So I'm creating one for my Windows machines here. So you can name this task accordingly. Let's call it June PT22. Again, creating a task is a 4-step process. The first step, you select the applications that you want deployed. So here I'm going to go with my security updates, non-security updates, let's say my optional updates. So you can go ahead and select any type of updates that you want deployed to your target systems. Again, we have the option to selectively patch here as well. You can go ahead and patch all your applications, or you can go ahead and give some exceptions like this. Say, I don't want to patch my Excel 2010. So none of the security updates that are applicable for Excel 2010 will be deployed if I exclude the same. So you can select the same for your third-party updates as well. And for Windows machines, you can also go ahead and deploy antivirus definition updates and driver updates. However, we would recommend you to create separate APD tasks for antivirus and driver updates as they're quite frequent and bulky updates. So once you've selected the updates that you want deployed, you can choose to deploy them after a particular number of days, from release or from approval. So I'm going to go with from approval because then I'll know that they have been tested. Moving on to the next step is choosing a deployment policy. This is where we associate our customized flexible policy with the APD task. Here we go. Select the policy that we just created and associated it with the task that I just created. You also have the option to suspend the task after a particular period of time. For instance, if I'm creating this task for my work from home machines and they come back to office the next month, I can just go ahead and suspend this task at the time of my requirement next month. So automatically this will be suspended next month. The next step and the third step is defining the target or choosing the computers to which you want these patches to be deployed. So you can go ahead and select your remote offices, your local offices, your roaming users, and so on. You can also filter out machines from the group that you have selected. For instance, let's say I don't want my Windows 7 machines to be patched, so I can just select and exclude them. So once that is done, the final step is configuring notifications. This again is an optional step. You can choose to get notified about your download and deployment status at the frequency of your choosing. You can also attach detailed reports of the same and send them to your email ID. You can also get notified via the mobile app if you've downloaded and configured the same. So once you've done all that, go ahead and give save, and you would have successfully created an APD task, thereby completely automating your patch management routine. Let's go back to our presentation now. So now that we have automated our patch management routine, let's take a look at a few other scenarios that we might encounter while patching. So filtering out Patch Tuesday updates. So this is something that most of our users ask how to achieve. This is very simple. All we have to do is go to the relevant tabs and just apply a filter. I'm going to show how this is done. So on the console, just going to go under patches. So we have the missing patches here, and you can just apply a filter to know which patches are missing after your Patch Tuesday release. So go ahead and put your release date equal to, or it's even better if it's after Patch Tuesday. Go ahead and apply. And you can find the patches released after Patch Tuesday that are missing and the systems that are missing them. Look at that. So we have one critical update that is missing in one of our systems. You can drill down and check the system that's missing it as well. You can also initiate the patch installation from here as well. So that is how you filter out and check your Patch Tuesday updates that are missing. Going back to our presentation, let's take a look at another scenario now. So some of the business applications that we might be running might not be compatible with the latest versions of certain software, such as Java. So in this case, you might not want to update the software. So what do? In Patch Manager Plus, we have the option to decline such patches. So I'm going to show you how this is done. Go to the console, and under patches, we have the option to decline patch. Let me just reload it once. We have the option to decline patch right here. So click on that. So you can select a group of computers to which you want to decline a particular set of patches. So go ahead and select your target group of computers. Let's go with, say, developers. The next step is selecting the patches or the family of patches that you want declined to this particular set of computers. So a few months back, we had some of our Microsoft updates that broke. So in case you get to know of such updates through community forums and other discussions, you can go ahead and decline them before they're deployed to any of your machines. You can also go ahead and decline an entire family of patch. So in this case, what happens is If you decline an entire family of patches, even if there's a new patch that comes in under this particular family, it will automatically be declined for this group of computers. So once you've selected all of the patches you want declined, go ahead and give next. You get a brief summary of everything that you've selected. So you can check that and give save. So once you decline a patch, they will not be shown in the missing patches view and they will not be considered when calculating the system health as well. So with that, we've come to the end of today's session. So on your screen, you can find the solutions that we offer which support patch management. So we have Endpoint Central, which is our flagship product. It is our unified endpoint management and security solution. Then we also have the MSP version of the same. We have Patch Manager Plus, which is our standalone patch management solution, which is the solution I used for demo today. We also have Vulnerability Manager Plus, which is our vulnerability assessment and threat mitigation solution that comes along with patch management. In case if you guys are using an SCCM environment and you want help with third-party application patching, you can go ahead and use Patch Connect Plus. It integrates seamlessly with SCCM and helps with third-party application patch management. It also integrates with Microsoft Intune as well. So we're still taking questions. If you guys have any doubts with respect to the Patch Tuesday updates or our products, do let us know via chat and we will try to answer as many as possible. Hope you guys found this session useful. Please take a few minutes to rate our webinar and fill out the survey. Your suggestions will help us tweak the session for the next month. If you need any further clarity on any of our solutions, we also offer free personalized demos for the same. So if you're interested in a demo, do let us know through chat. And if you have any additional queries, you can always write to me at this email ID, karthika.s@zohocorp.com. Thank you all so much for joining the session today and patiently sitting through it. You guys have been an amazing audience. See you next month and have a great day.